In this video, I want to talk about why psychopaths can be so charming and so good at manipulating their victims when they don't have empathy and they can't put themselves in someone else's shoes. Why are their victims so fooled by them? In a 2008 study, participants had to remember virtual characters, and those who scored highly in psychopathy had a much better memory for sad and unsuccessful female characters than for the other characters. So psychopaths have a very selective attention and memory, and they are naturally good at spotting vulnerable people who would make good victims. The reason they can do this is because of cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is when you can understand how someone's feeling, even though you don't care about it. It's different from emotional empathy because emotional empathy is where you feel what someone else is feeling. Psychopaths know what people are feeling, but they don't feel it themselves, so they're at a real advantage because they can come across as if they empathise when they don't. If they know what someone's feeling, then they know how to behave in order to come across as empathic. When a psychopath is trying to get information that they can use against you, they do come across as really attentive and really interested in you, and that can be really flattering because they seem like such good listeners, and so it can be easy to fall for that and to think that this person seems really on your wavelength and to really care. They seem to really care about what you're saying. And because it comes across as if they must care about you. Even if they've just met you, they already find you fascinating. That's how it can seem, especially when at the same time they're putting you on a pedestal. And that's exactly what Patrick Frazee did. Patrick Frazee is accused of beating to death his fiancée Kelsey Bereth with a baseball bat while their small baby daughter was in the room next door. And the way he apparently did this, according to his girlfriend who's testified in court against him, is that he asked Kelsey to put a blindfold on, telling her he wanted to play a game of having her guess the smell of different candles. And when she put the blindfold on, he then beat her with a baseball bat so severely that some of her teeth fell out. Although Kelsey was planning to leave Patrick, she still had enough trust in him to wear the blindfold. Patrick Frazee's ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Curie, described how Patrick Frazee had come across as attentive, very supportive, engaging, excellent at reading people, and helpful, and how this had fooled her, because later on he turned out to be very different. And he could be all of those things because of his cognitive empathy, because he knew what she needed. He spotted her vulnerabilities and he knew how to come across in a way that would make her feel really understood and supported. She said he would listen to everything she said and be really attentive and helpful, and then use those things she'd said to tear her down later. And she talks about the way that he would, it would be such a roller coaster relationship because he would put her up on a pedestal and then rip her down. So she talks about how he wouldn't call her for a long time, and then suddenly he'd call her in the middle of the night and say he'd been having visions of her in a wedding dress and how they should measure her finger for a wedding ring. And so then she'd feel really special and loved and cared for, and as if she must have been at the front of his mind even though he hadn't called. And so what Patrick Frazee was really good at was pushing her to a point where she was devastated and thought that he wasn't at all interested. He just absolutely didn't care about her. And then once she had reached that point, he would build her back up. He could watch Vanessa's bewilderment and confusion and despair, and just before she would have completely lost all hope and possibly given up, he could give her a ray of hope and build her back up, and so make her more and more dependent on him and on this drug that he could give her of of validation. Like every dangerous drug, it would give her something she became more and more dependent on, while also taking much more away from her. He was able to do this because of his cognitive empathy, because he was aware of what Vanessa was feeling each time he complimented her, made her feel really special, and then ignored her or was abusive towards her emotionally. He could see how confusing that was. And so because he could sense exactly where she was emotionally and what she needed and when she was doing well and when she wasn't doing well, because he was so good at noticing that, he could play this game really well. Vanessa's mother has talked about how Vanessa was pushed to a point of feeling suicidal, and that this was because of the way she was repeatedly put on a pedestal and then ripped down, and put up on a pedestal again and then ripped down again. Last week, Patrick Frazee pleaded not guilty. His trial has been set for the 28th of October. Krystal Lee was having an affair with Patrick Frazee, and she had cleaned up the crime scene. She talked about, just how horrific it was, blood everywhere, that Kelsey's tooth was in an air vent in the ceiling. Vanessa believes that Krystal was also completely entranced by Patrick Frazee and under his spell. In my next video, I'm going to talk about why people stay in abusive relationships and talk more about this addictive cycle and how it works. I'm going to put that video online tomorrow, so if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.